This is Logical Logistics, where we cover shipping, supply chain, logistics, and everything in between. Welcome to the show. All right, thanks for joining us for another episode of Logical Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Becht. Today we have a great episode because we're going to address cargo and shipping insurance. My guests today are Dave Pasco, Senior Account Manager with Roanoke Trade, and Tom Moran, Sales and Account Manager with Roanoke. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is something, with any business, as we know, insurance is extremely important. So I wanted to have you guys on and talk about cargo insurance, just the basics, what is involved with it, what we're looking for as far as current business trends, future business trends, if there are any. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Tell me a little bit about yourselves. Dave, why don't you start?
Okay, I've kind of been associated with transportation all my adult life.
Okay.
Starting out with 23 years in food and drug retail in the Chicago area. Seems like everything I've done has always revolved around trucks, drivers, freight. Had the opportunity to join a logistics company in Minnesota, AirPlus Limited, as their VP of Administration. And what I was, my daily duties included contract management for not only vendors but for customers. And I also got the ugly stuff, the compliance stuff, like TSA when TSA first came about, and OSHA, and all those types of ugly things.
Just want to stop you there. So you go back to the TSA, and I don't want to get sidetracked here, but I just want to ask you a question. When they went from the traditional, you just handed in, you mailed in everything, to online, did you encounter any type of? Were you part of the process at that point?
Well, I was in freight forwarding when unfortunately 9/11 happened.
Right, exactly.
And we went from having the FAA,
right,
which basically in the freight world meant that where your hazardous goods at on the airplane.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the biggest.
And that really kicked in after the TWA crash over Long Island. All right, so go on. And
then the TSA came along, and we had offices throughout the country, and it was always interesting because there would be TSA seminars, and it was always interesting to see what was happening, what the message was in Washington, what the message was in the Midwest, and what the message was on the West Coast.
Exactly.
And they've gotten extremely better at this.
Oh yeah.
Over the course of time, as you can imagine, that's the start of any organization is tough, and getting the right message across is tough. There's certain things that freight forwarders can talk about as far as TSA regs. I no longer handle sensitive information,
right.
So I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
What's happening now, but
it's actually very limited what you can talk about on media with TSA. The only reason I asked is I was part of. We're going back to our backgrounds, and I was I was handling the TSA program, and the powers that be where I worked didn't really inform me that they were going online. So I was on vacation, and I got an email saying that you haven't filed online. So I'm scrambling, and I was just wondering if you went through.
There was pretty much a lot of scrambling, and and once again, like yourself, I was subject to a boss, and when I put things together for the TSA, I informed my boss that I was going to bring the TSA in to perform an audit. Well, he started getting all excited about this, and I said, well, it's better that you have, you open your doors to, people in the regulatory positions, so that, it's an open door policy, so that people see that, you're open to things, you're not necessarily hiding things, but you learn, because there are things that, especially in the infancy of the TSA, well, it's kind of like everybody, what was good, in Philly, could now be good in Chicago, could be good in Minneapolis. So as, everything, grows and evolves, all of these, good ideas, got added into the program.
Right.
But, telling your boss that you're calling in regulatory agency for an audit sometimes is a little.
It becomes startling.
Yeah. Blood pressure.
Yeah. All right. So back on track. You're working for a freight forwarder at this point.
Yeah, working for a freight forwarder. What happens in the freight forwarding industry? There's addition by subtraction. Our company got purchased by Stonepath Logistics.
Okay.
Currently, there doesn't exist on the planet. But, I'll kind of kick it way down the road here. I started my own transportation consulting business where I would go in and I would look at, people's contracts. I would look at their insurance and, make recommendations. And during my course of, working at Stonepath and AirPlus Limited, I had the opportunity to work with some of the major insurance brokers, the Marshes, and Gallagher's of the world, and there was this guy, Sean Walsh, that I met at Roanoke. Well, Sean never got any of our business when we went with Marsh, but Sean would always answer the phone when I called him, which is very critical in this business.
Yes.
You can have a policy with anybody, you can have great rates, but if you're not getting any service, you don't have anything.
Right.
So I went into my boss's office one day and said, "Hey, look, if our policies are up, we need to go with the guys who have shown interest in our account." So to make a long story short, when I went out on my own as a consultant, I brought some business to Roanoke, and then I needed to move back to Chicago for personal reasons, and they offered me a position.
Okay, so where were you before?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. And Tom, why don't you kind of give us a little of your background?
All right, so Tom?
My background is a little bit shorter.
Okay.
I'm newer to the industry. Born and raised in Illinois, so I've been right around this parts. And graduated from Northern Illinois. I actually worked for a small candy manufacturer.
Okay.
My first job out of college, and looking back at it, a lot of benefits now because the staff was about 6 people, so you really did everything.
It's interesting you bring that up. And we're getting sidetracked here again. Have you read the book Emperors of Chocolate?
No.
All right, I highly recommend it since you worked in the candy industry, and it focuses, I would say, 60% of the book focuses in the Chicago area because this was pretty much the candy and chocolate capital of the world. And then, of course, they go to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and Switzerland for Nestle's. But, yeah, just a fascinating book. So that's interesting that you started with that.
If you're downtown Chicago at the right time, you can just smell the chocolate from Bloomers, I think.
Exactly, yes, yeah. And I knew a guy at Ferrer Penn, and it was a great meeting because I like lemon heads, and next thing I knew, he sent me a year's supply of of those. So go on. So you worked for a candy company.
Yeah, did everything. My job title was marketing, but it really was everything the customer could want. So if they had a problem with their logistics, I was calling the freight forwarders we were using, product development, sales, even accounting issues. And so it really gave me a wide variety of things. I started in the insurance industry around 2013 as a surety underwriter, actually, here at Roanoke. And we underwrite a lot of customs bonds. We do the OTI bonds and the BMC bonds for the FMCSA.
Okay. Now, so at that point, when you make the migration into the insurance industry, what kind of training and qualifications and certifications do you have to get to go into this? Obviously, there's different exams you have to take to become certified. So what's the process? Because I know that part of my listener base are younger people that are looking to get into different facets of this industry.
Sure.
So what do you have to do to get into this industry?
Well, getting back to when I was a consultant, I knew that after being in the freight forwarding industry and having a lot of connections in the freight forwarding industry, that if I was talking to somebody about their insurance, they're always going to say, "Well, what qualifies you to talk to me about insurance?"
Right.
Okay. So I went ahead and got my insurance license in the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it's kind of an odd thing in the insurance industry because most of the people who are licensed in property and casualty, property and fire, Okay, there's no real designation in a lot of cases for cargo insurance. So the training that you get doesn't necessarily translate to what you do on the job. Mm-hmm. Okay, so, once again, the training that you get on the job, I was fortunate because I had, the occasion of running a claims department for a freight forwarder, the one that I worked for. And so I, had the ability on a daily basis, or the need on a daily basis, to know how the insurance policies worked. Okay, who was getting paid, who was not getting paid, how to settle a claim, so forth and so on. So when I made the transition to Roanoke in 2010, I kind of had a leg up on a lot of people. Okay, because I was familiar, A, with the transportation industry, and B, I was familiar with the insurance product. But like anything else, you think you know a little something about something until you're living it on a daily basis.
Right.
So, speaking for myself, it's a lot of self-study, a lot of reading. Okay, a lot of mentorship by people here at Roanoke. We've got people who have been in the industry for 30 plus years that are, very anxious to share their knowledge because, what is a team without a good bench, right?
Right.
Okay, so, like in Tom's case, bringing, new people into the business, I'm 58, Tom is
33.
So, there's a big spread here, but, there's, all you have to do is have a want to learn. And, at least from our experience at Roanoke, you're going to find someone to teach you.
That's great. So
when I got my license as well, and, you learn the material, you pass the exam, but I feel the best way to learn is just being with experienced professionals.
Now, did you come to Roanoke, and then was it a process where you get your license first, or did you come to Roanoke and they help you along with the process?
The training process at Roanoke was about 3 years of learning their products. They were, it was a great training program they put me through because they really wanted you to learn everything before you're out talking to customers. And as David said, if you want to be a P&C sales representative, property casualty, there's a lot of programs in place, a lot of material. But what we specialize in is a lot of like surety bonds where you could get your customs broker's license, but then you're going to be a customs broker probably. If you want to learn the underwriting and sales side of it, it's really just by doing and working with others that are already experienced in that field.
Sure. And
same thing with the marine coverage. We have, luckily, within 15 feet of my desk, I can talk to 4 different individuals with 30 years of experience. So I don't think I could get that anywhere else.
That's great. Yeah. All right. So, Tom, you were going into different areas of coverage, like customs bonds, surety bonds. Can you go into each specific one and what they are?
Sure.
Right.
About, what do you think our customs bond ratio is? Maybe 60% of our business, 70% would be the customs bonds we write. And most of those would just be the standard import bond. If you're bringing goods into the U.S., you need your bond. So that's most of the bonds we see. You start there around $50,000, and those are the pretty standard bonds.
And what's this covering for the lay person out there that's listening, or the younger person? For it, so in something that's imported into the United States coming in, you get a customs broker. You need an import bond.
Correct.
All right. So
correct.
what's it literally covering?
It's a guarantee.
Okay.
What a bond is, which I mean, most of the time you're not even familiar with bonds unless you're in the industry. It's just a third party contract, and it's a guarantee that the principal in the case, or the importer, will
fulfill
their duties.
Okay. All right.
To customs.
Okay.
And that is for the duties and taxes.
Duties and taxes, and any penalties they may assess, and then our part would be the third party of that contract, and we would work for the surety.
Okay.
And they're the ones that would come through. And then another thing that's interesting with bonds, when you don't realize, is it's not insurance. When they pay out, they collect as well. It's not insurance that you're supposed to be using instead of payment.
Okay.
Yeah, bond underwriters expect to have zero claims, as opposed to marine underwriters who know that, due to the rigors of transportation,
there's going to be
sooner or later you're going to have a claim. There are a couple other bond types like drawback, where you have an accelerated payback of the duties and taxes that you pay for goods that are brought into the country but not introduced into commerce.
Okay.
Something that may, it may go into a foreign trade zone where something is being added or subtracted to it, and then it's exported. So that any of the duties and taxes owed for that particular, shipment get refunded to you.
Okay.
There's custodial bonds where, guys who are running bonded warehouses or bonded carriers, or even for doing data entry work with customs, you need a C2 bond, it's called, custodian of bonded goods. We do international carrier bonds and VOCC bonds, like Tom mentioned.
Yeah.
And VOCC's vessel carrier.
Yeah,
correct.
Non-operating
Right.
vessel,
Right.
common carrier.
Right.
And one kind of step down or offshoot from a bond is also our carnet program.
Okay.
And the easiest.
And a carnet is basically like a passport for a shipment that goes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For your goods, and that's
Yeah.
Right, so
when
go
they're
on.
leaving the country.
Okay.
Yeah. So instead of using a temporary import bond, in a lot of cases, if under the right conditions, you're able to, for a very fraction of the price of what a temporary import bond would cost you, use a carnet.
Okay.
So, and we've been, I think since 1978, we've been working with the U.S. Council for International Business as a carnet provider.
All right.
So we've got a total department just devoted to carnets.
With that, we see a lot of trade shows with concerts where they're going to be going to 6, 10 different countries. Instead of getting a temporary import bond in each country, you get one carnet.
Right. Yeah, that makes obviously
so
that
much
makes
easier.
sense. Yeah. All right, so you go from bonds back to the C2 bond. What exactly? How would that come into play?
Okay, if you're moving freight that is in bond,
yes.
Okay, it obviously needs to be with a bonded carrier.
Right.
Okay, so the trucker needs to be bonded.
Yeah.
Where he's dropping the goods off, needs to be bonded too until it clears customs.
Okay.
Okay. Once it clears customs, then the freight is no longer needs to be moved in bond. Any common carrier can handle it at that point.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Now, to moving over into insurance, what type of insurance does Roanoke offer?
We specialize, once again, since we've been around since 1935, specializing in the transportation industry.
Yeah.
Any type of transportation insurance that you can imagine, we handle. The vast majority of our business is with non-asset-based carriers, okay, or freight forwarders, customs brokers,
right.
Okay, property brokers, okay. We run the entire gamut from all-risk insurance to contingent cargo and contingent auto for property brokers and forwarders, to protect our interest in the event that an accident happens or some damage to cargo happens and the underlying carrier's insurance doesn't respond. The most interesting one is the shipper's interest, okay, because what you're able to do is offer the ability to, for a freight forwarder to offer an all-risk policy to their customers. So, depending on how knowledgeable you are about shipping, and believe me, there are a lot of people who have been in the business for a long time and still there are things that trouble them.
Right.
Okay? Carrier liability, for instance, moving goods by ocean, your carrier liability is $500 per customary shipping unit,
mm-hmm.
which, if you're not an educated shipper, and if you're a freight forwarder and you're not educating your shipper, you're going to end up on the bad side of an issue. Okay, because imagine if you've got $100,000 worth of goods in a 20-foot container. Okay, something happens at sea, the ship runs aground, they start jettisoning containers in order to get the ship afloat again, and this happens all the time. Okay, you're out your $100,000 worth of goods, and the carrier happily sends you a check for $500. Okay, that's where other insurance comes in, and I know that anyone listening to this is going, the insurance guy's always got his hand in my pocket. Well,
right.
There's a reason for that. Okay, so how do you combat that? Okay, you've got your own bill of lading. If that shipment is writing on your bill of lading, that is has its liability spelled out in your terms and conditions. Most have it back to back, what we call. Carrier says $500 per customary shipping unit. Your bill of lading is going to stay the same. But what happens is, once again, you offer the $500 to your shipping customer, and his hair stands on end because don't you know I'm going to be out, the balance of what I thought that I was going to have in goods. So he sues you. Okay, because that's what we do in the United States.
Exactly.
We love to sue. Okay, and your bill of lading, legal liability, the primary function to that seems nowadays is that it's going to offer you defense. Okay, so if you're you're an NVO or a freight forwarder and you're operating without that net of a bill of lading legal liability, you've been misinformed by someone, or you're rolling the dice. And as we find out in this industry, sooner or later you'll have your turn in the barrel as far as a claim goes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Definitely. And I'm glad you brought up the educated shipper point, because not only does it could hurt your pocketbook, but I also believe that an uneducated, if you're not educated as a shipper, you turn down opportunities as well. Mm-hmm. And to be able to have this in knowledge, increased knowledge that you guys are providing, is just an added bonus to open up your avenues of new business opportunities.
Right.
Definitely.
I probably do 30 cargo seminars a year.
Really?
In some way, fashion, whether I do it at a, something like an industry, the Detroit Customs Broker, freight forwarder, or
sure.
Something. I belong to a number of different organizations. That they ask you to speak on a certain topic, and trying to get everyone, the shippers and also the freight forwarding community and property brokers, understanding where their liabilities lie. Okay, and how you can help minimize the risk, like you said. You're protecting your profitability. Okay. I'm sure that a lot of listeners have at some point in time had a customer that goes, I don't care what the carrier's liability is. I've been giving you my freight for 15 years. Okay, there's never been a problem before. There's a problem now. You need to make good, or I'm going to walk with my business.
Right.
So at that point in time, you need to make a business decision. Whether you're going to, pay out of your pocket. Okay, I prefer to educate my guys so that everybody knows. If you ask your forwarder one question, let it be this: when an accident happens or a claim happens, what are you going to pay me? Okay, if you ask that one question, you're going to be so much ahead of the curve, because then that opens up the conversation for the forwarder to educate you on what the ocean carrier's liability is, what your international air carrier liability is, what your domestic carrier liability is. Because, in a lot of cases, a carrier's legal liability has got nothing to do with an act of God. Okay? A shipper's interest policy is going to cover you for those things.
Sure.
So I always tell, my customers and my prospects, you've got legal liability insurance in one bucket, okay? And then you've got your all-risk policy in the other bucket. Everything that you can take out of the legal liability bucket and put into the shipper's interest bucket, you're going to be better off because it's far better coverage.
Great. Yeah. So, Tom, do you have any good stories for us? Can you go from the mundane to the exotic as far as what
some crazy shipments that we've
right?
insured?
So no, just begin. Like, what is there a limit that you'll insure?
Okay, in-house we've got a $20 million limit.
Okay.
Okay. However, one of the good things about being a Munich Re company is, we've got access to, Lloyd's of London.
Yeah, syndicate of Lloyd's.
Right.
We are a Lloyd's syndicate, and there is basically, with the proper underwriting information, I don't think anything that we can't underwrite. There's some crazy things out there like, negotiable bearer bonds and, gold bullion, things that, we're definitely going to shy away from. But, if you've got a big, wind turbine project, perfect. Okay. You're moving 100 containers of X to China or vice versa. Okay. Those are the things that really kind of, as a insurance producer, kind of get your blood going, okay?
Yeah.
Like, being, a freight forwarder like you are, you know that, okay, anybody can move, widgets from, here to there, but it's the project work that really makes things interesting because then you truly find out that, in our case, we start with a blank sheet of paper, and then we start filling in the blanks as far as what a customer's needs actually are.
Yeah. And
then tailor a policy, or whether it's an annual policy or whether it's just a project policy, to the exact needs of the customer.
Okay. So, Tom, you brought up the bonds and the carnets, trade shows. Have you dealt with the trade shows and concerts?
Oh, for the carnets? Yeah. That's fun because you'll see some of these. You get a little excited to see U2 or something is.
So an act like that, there's got to be tons of.
Oh, tons of equipment.
Yeah.
And, the carnet volumes could get really high, millions of dollars, just all their equipment, and then
insuring Madonna's wardrobe alone.
I can imagine. Yeah. So and
you forgot to bring half of this back.
And you're 100% serious. So you have insured an act like Madonna. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in that respect, you had the carnet, but are you also insuring her amps, her wardrobes, or everything that's being shipped?
Yeah, we've got a customer off the West Coast that, in our West Coast office actually deals with them.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. What about here in Chicago now? So, as I said, the mundane to the exotic. So give me
more trade shows in Chicago than rock concerts.
Right. It's interesting you bring this up because one of my previous guests has developed an anti-theft crate that it's like a crate within a crate because in my personal experience, there's a few airports out there. I'm not going to name ones, but usually on the East Coast, they're very adept to theft, and it always happens when, as you mentioned, Dave, the customer, we've been shipping with you for 20, 30 years. We're not going to file you're not going to declare any value. And those guys know how to poke a hole and pull out a fur and they do it. So, I've experienced it. So here, what do you regularly see, and name some crazy things that you've seen here out of Chicago?
When I was in freight forwarding in Minnesota, I had one of my customers was Best Buy.
All right.
And we used to run a music and DVD and CD program where we would go to their stores twice a week. And, when we had a standing order that do not preload any trailers. Well, unfortunately, one individual in Chicago thought that, he wanted to get that jump on Black Friday deliveries. Okay, so he preloaded a trailer and a straight truck. So of course, $1.3 million in music, DVDs, CDs, and cassettes go missing. And during the investigation, we worked with the Chicago Police and Pinkerton's investigating and a couple different other resources, and traced it back to some of the goods being sold here in Chicago, stolen here in Chicago. And, to kind of make a long story short, I end up going on a raid with the FBI to a guy's house. Okay?
Interesting. All right.
Never heard this story.
All right. Now we're talking.
So
here we go.
We recovered, close to $400,000 worth of goods at this guy's house and $70,000 in cash. We were never able to prove that this guy did it, but he was convicted. He actually pled guilty of receiving stolen goods. And he was actually out of jail. He only got 13 months. He was out of jail before this claim was finalized. And just to show you how things, a lot of people don't understand that, possibly the number one business in the world is cargo theft.
Sure.
Okay. When we got freight back from Best Buy, we returned it to Best Buy, and of course they run it through their scanner, and I'm getting reports back, and I'm going, oops, well, we didn't move any of that. We didn't move that either. So what happened was our stolen merchandise was commingled with another forwarder's stolen merchandise. So the next thing you know, I'm getting a claim from this other forwarder about the goods that this guy had. So, by the time this thing was done, it probably ate up about 18 months of my life.
Wow.
So I kind of figured that I was getting out of freight forwarding, to go into insurance and
not the FBI.
Doing
I thought maybe law enforcement.
Yeah, kicking down doors.
Yeah.
No.
Wow, an FBI raid. That's pretty.
That's a good one. Wow.
So
yeah.
Adrenaline
pumping.
Yeah, it had to be because it was probably one of the coldest days of the year.
All right. Yeah.
So it was kind of rewarding to get some of the freight back, but at the end of the day, if people would just follow some standard security procedures that are in place, it would have never happened.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like word to the wise. If your risk manager says, "Hey, it's not a good idea to do something," maybe it's not a good idea to do it.
Right. Exactly.
And we've got, cases of where we move, big ticket items all the time, and, there's warranties put into the quote, okay, that if you, sometimes you may have to cross-declare a portion of the, the total value with the airline, or get a trucker that's got,
exactly.
$500,000.
All right, so go to a little bit, so a cross-declaration.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So can we go into a little bit of that?
Sure.
Right.
And a lot of people, once again, that aren't educated about things, okay, your trucker's limiting their liability too, okay? Carmack allows them to limit their liability, and they're not going to cover you for acts of God, the acts of the shipper, strikes, riots, civil commotions, and a couple others. So, knowing once again, if you're taking $100,000 pallet of my computers or whatever, if there's a claim, what am I going to get paid? And you could talk about, LTL companies that deal with a release value. They're paying out $25 per pound for electronics. That's all you're going to get.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So once again, knowing what you're doing and knowing what the limits of liability out there is very critical to your bottom line.
Now, are you insuring the carriers as well? Do they come to Roanoke? Are you the airlines, the big LTL companies?
No.
Okay.
No.
So who covers? how are they getting their insurance?
Okay, their insurance. I know that I have a friend that's that's a broker out on the West Coast, and his company handles the Conways, the XPOs of the world. So,
right.
What they're offering is motor truck cargo legal liability.
Right.
Whereas we offer motor truck cargo legal liability for smaller ventures and also motor truck cargo. Those big companies have to go to another market for an all-risk policy.
Okay.
So in that particular case, a lot of times, we've got partners out there that come to us to underwrite. There are times where, a Marsh or an Aon will come to Roanoke underwriting because we've got 3 different divisions here. Okay, we've got the Roanoke retail division, which is the brokerage side. Okay, which guys like Tom or myself. We've got access to all the major players, the Travelers, CNA, Allianz, and just to name a few carriers. And what we do when we have a risk is we take a look at, we don't want to just give a person one option, okay? We're going to give you multiple options, and then we're going to tell you exactly, the differences in the coverage, because there are differences in coverage, okay? And we also have Roanoke underwriting, which we hold the pen for, okay, which is industry terminology for we actually underwrite ourselves, okay, which in a lot of cases allows us a little more leverage, okay, or freedom to manuscript things for particular risks, okay, and then we've got our claims, Roanoke claim service.
Okay.
And I have to tell you that we probably have more claims people here at Roanoke than a lot of your traditional insurance companies do. And these people are all trained. They've got a world of experience. And in a lot of cases, if I have something that's written on our own paper, okay, that's on our Lloyd's policy, you go down to the 5th floor and you talk to the people about the claim. And I don't know of any other broker that has that ability. I'm sure there's some out there, but
sure.
I can only speak to what Roanoke does, and the ability to sit down face to face with the adjuster and say, okay, well, let's go over the policy. You're interpreting it this way. Why? Then you may get the underwriter involved and get the underwriter to weigh in on what the intent of the policy was. So it's really pretty interesting stuff.
So that really goes back to when we talked earlier in this interview that this is a company where you're able to call and talk to somebody, but it sounds like you just get things moving. It's a one-stop shop where you're able to talk to people within the department to get things done when there is a claim.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Once again, my guests this week on Logical Logistics are Dave Pasco, Senior Account Manager with Roanoke, and Tom Moran, Sales and Account Manager with Roanoke. Tom, I wanted to ask you, for the younger listeners that are out there, the guy that's in college that wants to get into this area of career path, what would you suggest they do as far as getting into cargo insurance or insurance in general?
Well, if you were to get into a company like Roanoke that specializes in transportation, I mean, I wish I had more experience working for a forwarder or a customs broker to see that side of the business and do the everyday in and outs with them. I think that would have been a big advantage.
Okay.
The other thing is a lot of colleges now have insurance programs as part of it. I know ISU, Illinois State, has the Katie School of I think it's Katie School of Insurance, which
would make sense because State Farm's down there.
Yeah,
yeah. So
they recruit a lot of them.
Yeah, so there is an insurance. What was that called again?
I think it's Katie School of Business.
Okay.
We have some of our employees here did like a double major in like finance and insurance, which gave them a huge head start in the business because they came in knowing so much more.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I've known a few people in the insurance, not cargo. Well, I've dealt with cargo, obviously, but I know people from other insurance, the other insurance side, and it just certainly seems to be an exciting and growing area of opportunity.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it's more fun and interesting than some people think originally,
Yeah.
Getting into insurance, especially, I love the marine part of it. You really get to see some interesting
I'm sure. So do you go to the Port of Illinois and make visits at all, or?
No, I do not.
All right.
I have gone to Port of New York out there.
Really?
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's better. Yeah. Get to go out to Long Beach or Los Angeles at all?
No, that's on my to-do list.
All right, excellent. Very good.
Yeah, I've been out to Long Beach a number of times.
All right.
That's just wow.
Massive.
I've seen pictures. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Now, where's the corporate office located?
Corporate office is located here in Schaumburg.
All right.
Okay.
So that would be my next.
3 floors down. Yeah.
All right.
And we've got we've got offices in New York, Boston, Charleston, Miami, Houston, Long Beach, of course.
Yeah.
And San Francisco.
All right.
And one thing that I always loved when I was a forwarder and I was insured with Roanoke was the fact that I was in Minnesota. I'm on Central Time, but man, as a forwarder, that everything starts hitting the fan around 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, we would have
on a Friday.
Yeah, we would have drop shipments from Best Buy that all of a sudden you're having to call the underwriter, which luckily mine was on the West Coast. Okay, at the Roanoke office in Long Beach, and my FedEx rep for air was out of Seattle. So there was a lot of interesting things that were happening after 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Freight doesn't always stop at 5 o'clock on Friday.
No, it's always going. Where do you guys see the industry going right now?
Well, you know what?
Do you see any trends?
The biggest trend is right now there seems to be a lot of capacity out there.
Mm-hmm.
So rates are low.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. A lot of times, historically rates have been kind of adjust themselves after unfortunately a natural disaster. Okay. But that really hasn't followed the trend lately with anything. The trend, unfortunately, more and more is people not understanding, what others' liability is that are handling their freight. And the trend is still, if I don't get what I feel I deserve, I'm going to sue you. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like there's a lot of people who may not have needed insurance before from a legal liability standpoint, but now shippers are demanding things.
Yeah.
Shippers are demanding that, if you're a property broker, that you have contingent motor truck cargo legal liability. They're demanding that, you have E&O. Mm-hmm. There's more and more liabilities that are being passed down to property brokers and forwarders via contract.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we do as producers is we take a look at, a lot of transportation contracts from an insurance standpoint. We're not lawyers. We're not lawyers, but we do point out the insurance parts of contracts that are of concern, that we feel that maybe you can push back to the shipper on some issues. A lot of times you find contracts that are out there that seem to have been cut and paste.
Right.
Or deals of where somebody says, well, this is a really good idea. We should ask the carrier for this. Oh, here's another contract. Well, that worked there. And, a lot of times there's parts of the contract that are in opposition of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then you're asking a freight forwarder who is trying to run his business, to be, attorney, his own attorney, and look at these things. We've come up with a program. Maybe Tom can fill us in on our new risk review program.
Oh yeah, the risk review program is something that's pretty neat. We're giving all of our customers access to several attorneys we work with, and they're actually attorneys like us that specialize in transportation, looking at bill of ladings, terms and conditions.
Yeah.
And with that, we worked out a partnership where they had some premium discounts for some of our customers. And at every renewal, we present that to them in case they need to take a look at their terms and conditions, bill of lading. Another time we recommend it is right now I feel like a lot of customers are kind of expanding. They might be getting into warehousing where they haven't before. So it's a nice way to be kind of proactive on, covering your exposures.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. You need insurance, you need a lawyer, you need an accountant. So,
yeah.
Yeah, those are the three things.
And by the way, you need somebody to move the freight.
This is true, yeah, and that's why we have this podcast, because it gets overlooked in the business community. I wanted to get it out there. So with that being said, I ask most of my guests. I don't stand to it, but I would say 90% of my guests, I ask a question: how do you define the term logistics? You see it everywhere, and you just mentioned, Tom, people are going into warehousing now.
You're right.
So yeah, you see logistics on the side of a storage facility. You see logistics on the side of an actual company that does massive amounts of shipping. How would each of you define the term logistics?
Funny you should mention it. In a lot of my cargo seminars, I ask that question. Okay, who is a logistics company? And I'll put up, a trucking company, a drayage company, a 3PL, a 4PL. Now we've got guys calling each other 5PL.
5PL.
I don't even know
what's his name.
And of these companies, which are, are logistics companies, well, they all are.
Right.
So, I always, kind of play a game of where I see when I'm driving, cross country or something like that. I take a look and I see a guy, okay, his side of his truck says logistics, and then you make a note of that company, then you look him up and he's got one truck. But he's a logistics company.
Yes.
Okay, he's moving freight.
Yes. Yeah.
John, with the...
I think that sums it up pretty well. Company that's, their primary objective is moving freight.
Yeah.
Whether it's in their own truck, I guess.
There's no right or wrong answer.
One of my fleet of 100.
One of my first guests answered the question. Logistics, it deals with logic. It's logic. That's the name of the show. Then I had a guest a few weeks ago. It's logistics is totally illogical. So yeah, I'm not looking for a right or wrong answer. I just want different.
Out of curiosity, what would your answer be, Joe?
I think it's all encompassing moving of material from point A to point B, packaging. It encompasses so much, as you said. And 5PL would be. I want to know what the fifth wall is, and that. Yeah, I mean packaging, because just on my side, I get inquiries. We got an inquiry yesterday, just to package like hundreds of thousands of dollars of computer equipment. Have 2 to 3 professional people go in, package, crate, palletize, and just leave. Nothing, and of course I asked, well, how? Because my bread and butter would be where's it going? How do I ship it? No answer whatsoever. So it's really interesting, the different inquiries. And then when you get on the international side, it opens up a whole new door of inquiries that you have. But, yeah.
I just thought of something interesting that would probably happen in this crazy business that we're in. The guys come in and they crate all this stuff up and they can't get it out the door.
Yeah. I'm sure it's happened. In fact, I know it's. Yeah, we can trade stories all day. I've seen some pretty good stuff. David Pasco. Well, what's the best way for a person or a company to contact you?
My desk phone would be 847.
All right.
969-8257.
All right.
Or my email address would be david.pasco@roanokeGroup.com.
And that's david.pasco. It's P as in Paul, ASCO @roanokegroup.com. Tom Moran, what's the best way for people to contact you or companies to contact you?
Feel free to call or email, and please feel free to call if you just have a question or want to get a little bit more information.
All right.
Promise I won't try to sell you insurance right away.
Your email address is tom.moran, MORAN, @roanokegroup.com. Gentlemen, thank you. I can't thank you enough for joining us on Logical Logistics. David, I'm definitely going to hit you up for another episode because I'm really interested in these cargo seminars that you run. Okay. So if you're open to it, I will love to have you on again.
Maybe you can have some of your listeners write in and talk about what their concerns are, and we can address those and dive into the difference between declared value and all risk insurance.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This is Joe Becht, your host at Logical Logistics, and we'll see you next episode. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you want to drop us a line, email us at becht5@comcast.net. You can leave comments, or if you want to be a guest, becht5@comcast.net. Also, make sure to review us on iTunes or other media outlets that we're located on. And we'll see you next time on Logical Logistics.
Click the subscribe button for new videos every week and download us and review us on iTunes. Visit www.beslogistics.net for more logistics, transportation, and warehousing resources. Thanks for watching.